Okay, so this is from Wikipedia, and this is about the Second Temple, the temple that the Jews have built to replace the first one that was destroyed when they were taken into Babylonian captivity. According to the Bible, the Second Temple was originally a relatively modest structure built by Jews who had returned from exile in Babylon under the authority of Persian-appointed governor Zerubbabel, the grandson of penultimate Judahite king Jeconiah. However, during the reign of Herod the Great over the Herodian kingdom of Judea, it was completely refurbished. The original structure was overhauled into the large edifices and facades that are more recognized in modern recreated models. After standing for approximately 586 years, the Second Temple was destroyed by the Roman Empire during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70, current era, we would say AD 70. And just so you know where we stand here, the accession of Cyrus the Great of the Achaemenid Empire in 559 BC made the reestablishment of the city of Jerusalem and the rebuilding of the temple possible. Some rudimentary ritual sacrifice had continued at the site of the first temple following its destruction. According to the closing verses of the second book of Chronicles and the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, when the Jewish exiles returned to Jerusalem, following a decree from Cyrus the Great, Ezra 1:1 and 2nd Chronicles, construction started at the original site of the altar of Solomon's temple. These events represent the final section of the historical narrative of the Hebrew Bible. Not really, because we have the book of Maccabees too. That's the Second Temple. So if you remember, we were reading Ezra. Ezra is the priest or the scribe who has returned from Babylon and is helping to reinstitute sacrifices at the Second Temple that they are rebuilding slowly but surely. The wall of Jerusalem is the wall to protect Jerusalem from invaders and hostile forces. The construction of the wall is supervised by Nehemiah. So we've been reading Ezra, who's the priest. Now we're reading Nehemiah. Nehemiah is the governor appointed by the Persian officials who now control the Babylonian Empire. He's come into Jerusalem. He arrived 3 years after Ezra. And now we hear mention of Ezra again. So this is after the Jews have returned to Jerusalem and have been released from captivity. The Second Temple is being built, but the wall defending the town has just been finished. It's easier to build the wall than to build the Second Temple. And we read about this proclamation of the law, which happens here in Nehemiah 8. So Nehemiah and Ezra are standing up there representing, and I'll look at this in a minute, according to Bible Hub, both the secular and the religious authorities, because Nehemiah is a governor, a secular authority. Ezra is a priest, a scribe, a religious authority. And they read from the book, from the law of God clearly. And they gave the sense so that people understood the reading. Second highlight, and all the people went their way to eat and to drink and to send portions and to make great rejoicing because they had understood the words that were declared to them. This is hopefully what's been going on in this class. When Nehemiah and Ezra are reading the law, which would be the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, it's the law of Moses. And when this is being read and proclaimed to the Jews, it's like a revival. They're recognizing again their obligations before God. And hopefully that's happened in this class too. They don't just read it and mumble it like we hear at Mass with the lectors sometimes. They proclaim it and explain it. There is an explication, an interpretation as they proclaim the law so that the hearers understand it. Because, as the eunuch said to Philip, how can I understand if no man show it to me? That's from the book of Acts. I think we went over that last semester. But let's take a little bit of a look here at what is said on Bible Hub. This is McLaren's exposition. According to Ezra 7:9, Ezra had gone to Jerusalem about 13 years before Nehemiah. I said 3, apparently 13. And had had a weary time of fighting against the corruptions which had crept in among the returned captives. The arrival of Nehemiah would be hailed as bringing fresh, young enthusiasm, nonetheless welcome and powerful, because it had the king's authority entrusted to it, meaning the Persian king Artaxerxes, who is in charge of this area, but allowing the Jews to return. Evidently, the two men thoroughly understood one another and pulled together heartily. We heard nothing about Ezra while the wall was being built in this first half of the book of Nehemiah. But now he is the principal figure, and Nehemiah is barely mentioned. The reasons for Ezra's taking the prominent part in the reading of the law are given in the two titles by which he is designated. In two successive verses, Nehemiah 8:1 and Nehemiah 8:2, he was the scribe and also the priest, and in both capacities was the natural person for such a work. The 7th month, when the law is being read, was the festival month of the year. It would have been in the fall. The first month would have been in March, as I understand it. So this would have been about September, October. The first day being that of the Feast of Trumpets and the great Feast of Tabernacles, as well as the solemn Day of Atonement occurring in it. The Jews still celebrate the Day of Atonement in the fall near the Jewish New Year. Well, now it's the Jewish New Year, but I mean, it's no longer the 7th month. It gets complicated. Anyway, possibly the prospect of the coming of the times for these celebrations may have led the people's wish to hear the law, that they might duly observe the appointed ceremonial. In other words, it's kind of like Christmas and Easter Catholics. Hey, it's Christmas. Maybe we ought to go to Mass. Hey, you know what? Maybe we ought to read the Bible. I ain't doing that. I took Mr. O'Brien's class. He scared me away. Well, in other words, the 7th month is the month of Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles, and these other festivals. And maybe this is what McLaren is guessing. Remember, scholarship consists of educated guesses. We've talked about that in class. He's guessing that maybe the people, the Jews, are saying, you know what? Here we are entering our big festival season. What is our religion really all about? Maybe they go to Nehemiah and Ezra and say, instruct us in this, because this is a time of rebirth in Jerusalem. They're building the second temple again. They've just completed the walls. Jerusalem again is a city of the people of God, and it hadn't been in any noteworthy sense since 586 BC when they were overrun by the Babylonians. So it's a rebirth, and they're interested again, maybe. So neither Ezra nor Nehemiah originated the gathering together. They obeyed a popular impulse, which they had not created. We must not indeed give the multitude credit for much more than the wish to have their ceremonial rite, but there was at least that wish, and possibly something deeper and more spiritual. The walls were completed, but the true defense of Israel was in God, and the condition of his defending was Israel's obedience to his law. The people were, in some measure, beginning to realize that condition with new clearness in consequence of the new fervor which Nehemiah had brought. So, as I say, this is kind of a rebirth of Jerusalem and the people according to that McLaren's exposition. It's quite possible that the people went to them and said, we want to know more. We want to get back to our roots, get back to what's important. We know that it's not just the wall that will defend us, it's God. We know that we are rebuilding a temple that Solomon had built, which has been destroyed, but we want to rebuild it. What should we do to be saved? And so it's proclaimed to them over the course of the entire 7-day festival. And the people are weeping, and the people are taking it to heart, and the people are going forth. It's kind of like a long retreat. And of course, probably like you, when you get back from a retreat, they probably come crashing down, and all of the great proclamations or resolutions they make and the spiritual high they have is, they get back to real life. But the idea, at least apparently, is that the people are saying, let's try to get it right this time. So that the Bible is not just a story of God extending his grace and his people rejecting it. It's also a story of the people suffering because of their rejection and then returning. There is a pull back toward God. As Jesus says, we just read this, maybe even today or yesterday, no man can come to me unless I draw them, unless my Father draws them, unless God draws us to him, we will not be drawn to him. So anything in our hearts that says, you know, I want to get more serious about this, and this class is about to end. So if something in it has sparked an interest in you where you say, I want to find out more about the Bible. Maybe I don't want to read 5 readings a day, but maybe I want to look more into the historical books of the Old Testament or the Psalms or Paul's epistles or the book of Acts, the early church, or the Gospels. There's something that's drawing me. That's divine. And that's what makes us students, is that pull, that mysterious draw, that search that we go on to find the truth. We see that today in Nehemiah 8. Maybe we see it in our own lives too. At least I hope and pray that's the case. 2 more videos to go. If I get that far, see you soon.